Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om, Om, Om. Om Guru. Welcome back to this second half of this series on calmness. And last week we talked about calmness in general, why it's important, what it is, and so forth. And I'd like in this second half to address the question of how do we become calm. And perhaps if you have questions later on, we can address those, something more specific applications and how we can apply this calmness, which in daily life. And it's something I think all of us know, that there are those times in life when we need to become calm, and that calmness gives us certain focus. If we're not calm, we understand that our thinking is not going to be clear, our emotions are upset, and certainly for those of us here who are on the meditational path, we can't meditate and we cannot go deep. And this is the main reason, I think, my motivation for doing these two classes, or if it goes longer, three, is that so many people have difficult time meditating. And obviously, my vocation has been, much of my life, is to teach meditation and teach these teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. And people become frustrated. I can't meditate. I was this way myself. And to be able to help people, and one of the very simplest things, yoga is not complex. It can be complex, but yoga at its essence is very simple. Relax, learn to focus the mind. And then through meditation, if we can become calm, we find that everything becomes more easy. And as I introduced last week, I mentioned the theme was that calmness is the doorway to freedom. It's the doorway by which we can ultimately have an experience of those higher states of consciousness, the aspects of God that we're taught. But if we can't go through that doorway, if we don't go through that doorway, we find ourselves frustrated. And so I wanted to come back and start at a very simple level, become calm, and not take that for granted. It's actually a very, very deep subject, and as I'll illustrate in a moment, a story that I'd like to share with you. But before we do that, let's just practice something. And I introduced a little bit last week, the most simple probably of all pranayama exercises. Of course, exhaling, and that's a pranayama too, but if we take that a step more, let's just inhale for a count of 6. Let's hold the breath for a count of 6, and let's exhale for a count of 6. And while we're doing this, feel as if your body is relaxing or letting go of tension. We're inhaling, oxygenating, bringing vitality into the body as we inhale. And as we exhale, we're expelling tension, and then we do this again. So let's just do this. We'll only do this 3 times. So let's begin by first tensing the body. Tense the body. Now throw the breath out. Now, as we close your eyes and concentrate at the point between the eyebrows, let's inhale to a count of 6. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold the breath, looking up in the spiritual eye. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Exhale, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, inhale. Hold. Exhale through the nostrils. Once more, inhale through the nostrils. Hold. Exhale. Now, of course, this is just a touch. We can do this many, many times, and we do this and we are able to slowly, you'll begin to feel the body becoming calm, the mind becoming calm, the heart itself will become calm, emotions will become calm. And as I said, probably almost the most simple, but yet this is something that Paramhansa Yogananda recommended for those of you who are followers of his teaching. He focused much of his of discussion when he was speaking about pranayama, just this very simple and at very few variations of it, of even count breathing. Now, there are many, many, many other variations of things that can be gone into in the science of pranayama, but that's not the, and you can pursue those, but that's not the focus of this class. But all of them have this as their intention, is to interiorize the mind, stimulate the energy in a controlled way, calm the body, calm the mind, and calm your reactive process ultimately. Now, there are pranayama exercises that do other things as well. But I don't recommend these. They in other words, stimulating the body, stimulating the breath, stimulating the energy, and then taking that stimulated energy out and expressing it. But that's not really the path of meditation, what we're speaking about here. And we have to realize that pranayama exercises are meant to calm the body. Even exercises such as Kapalabhati, which some of you know, more vigorous pranayama exercise, that's often taught, but unfortunately it's often taught to stimulate and energize the body, and people forget that Kapalabhati, that vigorous breath of fire, that is meant then, after you do that, to awaken the energy, but then to take that energy in and calm the body. It's meant for calmness, as is the true purpose of all of pranayama exercises. We go inward. Now, interestingly, it's something we should know. Why is pranayama effective? Within the body, there are two aspects of our autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is that intelligence of the body that we don't have to think about breathing, we don't have to think about digesting food. These things, or the blood system and the heart beating, all of these are automatic. And it's often thought these, of course, we have no control over these. But of course, we know that that's not the case if we study yoga. But there are two parts of that autonomic nervous system. One is called the sympathetic nervous system. You could say it's fight or flight. If something happens, you react, and it's very active, and it puts you into action, gets the body going, gets the heart moving, pumps adrenaline into your system when there's a need. This sympathetic nervous system takes action. But there's a complementary part of that autonomic nervous system, which is called the parasympathetic nervous system, and that's the automatic things your body does to bring you back into a state of balance, back into a state of harmony, back into a state of rest. It's that, I'm trying to think of an example, but one of might be that like you eat a nice big meal and all of a sudden you feel very relaxed, very calm, and afterwards, and it brings you back into that state. Well, when we practice a breathing exercise, just very simple, like we're doing, I started out with, this activates this parasympathetic nervous system, which is located in various nerve locations within the spine. And this is something the body actually naturally does when we get out of harmony, you might say, because of action of one sort. Body's system of automatically bringing us back into a state of harmony, state of balance is there. And if we can work with those principles and we come to realize that we can enhance the body's ability to do this. And this is what we do, that very simple pranayama that we started with, that actually brings the body back into balance. And if you practiced it, you'll see that the body naturally comes into a state of calm. That is the body's natural state. And unfortunately, those who are unable, they're to do that, to bring yourself back into calm, suffer perhaps from continual anxiety, continual tension, these sorts of things. That's a dis-ease. You're out of the state of ease, which should be our natural state, and you're now in a state of dis-ease, unease. And that's what brings so many maladies into our life. And so if we can learn to bring that under our control, and it's often said, people I know when I was a youngster and before many of these things were more popularly known, there was often thought that the body has its own rhythm. We can't really control it that way. But I remember reading a story, and you may remember this story if you've read about the life of Paramhansa Yogananda. In his early years in the United States, when he came to America in the 1920s, he traveled the country extensively, sharing these teachings. And he'd go to different cities, and he'd spend some weeks and sometimes even months in certain cities giving series of classes, especially if he found receptive audiences. He'd stay there or he'd come back for longer visits. And he was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, which is in the north center of America. And he was there for a couple of months giving classes. And the students students who were very interested. And he was taking them through a complete regimen of classes that ultimately led to initiation in Kriya Yoga. And one of his students invited him to his office where he was working, and to come to the office he could show him his office and perhaps discuss a little bit further. And Master said, okay, and he came to the office, and he went into his office, and the student was there. He was a director, I believe it was an insurance company. So he was the senior manager there. And he had an assistant there with him who also expressed interest and wanted to hear these things. So they were there, and the conversation came around to the breathing exercises that they had taught and how Master had expressed how you can control these things. And perhaps he had mentioned that gives one control even over death. We can, the breathing process to stop the breathing. And this man was very curious and says, well, can you demonstrate this to me? And Master says, of course. And so and he saw that there was a nice couch there. And he says, let me demonstrate. And so he laid down and he began to regulate his breathing, and it became slower and slower and slower until finally it stopped. And as the man was watching, he could almost feel or see the life force leave the body. Because if you've ever seen a corpse, or somebody who's recently died, there's a certain quality. You could see how that life force, they're not there anymore. They're gone. The body's, and there's a certain pallor that color and coloration in the body goes away, and the breath completely stopped. And so it was with Yogananda, and the man was aghast. Oh my God. And he tells his assistant, close the door, lock that door, and don't let anybody in here. Somebody's going to come in here and they're going to find a corpse here. Then what am I going to say? He went into something of a state of panic, and then, oh my God. And Master was there perfectly still. And the man said, no, Master, come back. You've got to come back. And of course, Master then slowly, he could see that the color began to come back into his body. The body began to breathe, and finally Master comes out and says, what? What? Of course, Master probably knew. And he says, oh, I'm so glad you're back. And he says, yes, I was just demonstrating that we have control over these aspects of our being that we don't think we have control, but we do on a very deep level. And this is the art, you could say, of super relaxation, because the ability to be calm is related very closely to the ability to relax. And this, of course, to relax completely, body, mind, and spirit leaves the body. This is, you could say, a destination for our practice. But this is what we want to do. We gain control to be able to consciously calm ourselves. I'm not saying we need to do it like that degree, but to the degree that we can calm ourselves. And then in that calmness, we begin to see that there's a change of consciousness that begins to take place. Well, there's a deep state that is, or you could say a deep potential that is there for all of us. And this is basically the basis of what we want to do when we become calm. But for those of us who are Kriyabans, I wanted to go over again those points I made last week of the correlation. And I've written them down here so I get them clear. If we interiorize our life force away from the restless emotions, senses, and mind, we take them away, is what Yogananda did when he was demonstrated. We go into the natural state of relaxation, calmness. But in the reverse, if we can calm ourselves consciously, we can then easily interiorize. In other words, this means meditation. And meditation has been shown is a very, very good way to activate that parasympathetic nervous system. And this has been demonstrated in many, many studies to be able to calm the body, calm the mind, calm the emotions. And in addition, if we moderate our likes and our dislikes, we more easily become calm. This is an emotional side of it. The likes and the dislikes have become somewhat dispassionate. And also, in reverse, if we become calm, we are less driven by our likes and our dislikes. So you see, they feed each other. They're related. And if we can moderate our likes and dislikes, we become detached. And when we are detached, the body and the senses calm down. And when they calm down, we're less attached to the senses and consequently less attached to circumstances outside of ourselves. And you put this all together and it opens a door to deeper spiritual experiences when we meditate. And calmness is that doorway. And this is what we have to do in order to be able to experience and have an experience of those deeper experiences and aspects of God, which we speak about in yoga. So if you don't have this, what happens is we're continually on the restless mind. We're continually, and so we have to, you could say, learn the art of super relaxation, relaxing the body, relaxing the tension. And of course, if you go back and think about the various stages, then when we teach how to meditate classes, we speak about this, how to get rid of that tension, how to sit properly, how to tense and relax the body. All of these are aspects of getting rid of that tension. And in the very process of getting rid of that tension, this parasympathetic nervous system begins to assert itself within the body. It's a natural state that will happen. But so you could say that's more of the natural state. Everything else is the unnatural state. It's necessary, natural in the sense that it's necessary to function sometimes when we have to be able to react quickly and put the body into motion and do these things. But afterwards, we want to train the body so that we can begin to withdraw and back in through relaxation. Breathing is one of the good processes for that. And also one other element, or multiple elements of one important element of being withdrawing, that is in order to, that allows us to go into a deep state of meditation, into a deep state of relaxation and calmness. And it's a barrier that is more subtle than these ones that are on the obvious surface. And so we obviously start with these in the meditation series. But as you go deeper into it, we come to this other one, and it's called ego management. It's our ego, that the sense of I-ness, that the sense of I am, this sense of wanting to assert ourselves in this world, which seems quite natural, things we do, but it also blocks us from being able to deeply become calm. There's a phrase that I've used, and I didn't invent this, I read it somewhere, but I think it's very apt. He said, we have to become, if we associated with calmness, we need to be still. But we're not just speaking here about stillness of mind or stillness of body. We're speaking also of stillness of mind, stillness of the emotion, stillness of our concentration ability, all of these things, non-vibration, you might say, non-restless. We have to be able to attain that. But this one gentleman who I'm quoting, he said, stillness is not attained until we overcome the need to be heard. Now, that's an interesting, the need to be heard. In other words, what he was referring to here, he didn't mean heard, and he says, my voice is loud enough. He wasn't meaning it in that way. I'm not speaking loud enough. He meant the need to be heard, the need that we have to assert ourselves in this world, to present ourselves. I want to be heard. I need to be heard. I need to be creative. I need to do these various things. And I need you to listen. And you say this impulse to assert ourselves in the word, this sense of I-ness into the life around us and into our situations. Now, I'm not saying we don't do that. We don't speak up when it's necessary. I don't say we don't assert ourselves when the situation calls for it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the need. You see, the impulse. I can't control that impulse to assert myself outwardly. And this basically is at the basis of one of our inabilities to be calm. I have to speak, I have to say something here. Rather than saying, well, wait a minute, do I really need to here? Can I control it? Can I control that impulse, which is basically the ego? Now, as long as we have that need, there's always going to be a certain amount of tension because we're being driven. And we have to ask ourselves, what's driving that need? And it's the ego. It's the ego identity that wants to, for various reasons, to drive that. And until we can overcome the need, the ego need, we're not going to be able to rest. We're not going to be able to be calm. Because we're not going to be in control. You could say in the ego, of course, is associated with the breath. The breath is a physical representation in the body of the ego's up and down movement of the life current in the spine, in the deep spine. When we inhale, there's a current of life force going up the spine, and when we exhale, there's a current of life force going down nerve channels within the spine. And so when we talk about the parasympathetic nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, we're really talking about learning to control and relax these nerve channels within the spine and learning to control the life force and the energy. And this is why pranayama is prana is life force. Prana is also breath. Learning to control that breath. And it's really learning to control the impulses that originate in association with the breath and in association with the movement of life force in the body. And ultimately, and then so long as we do not have control of that, the ego dominates our intentions and circumstances, and all of these things come into play. So we have to, at the same time, when we talk about calming the physical breath, calming the parasympathetic or controlling the parasympathetic nervous system, we also have to speak about learning to moderate and control the ego as well. The ego that is dominated by the reactive process of likes and dislikes. And so we're getting a little bit complicated here, but this is at the basis of the science of yoga. The science of yoga is the science of breath, is one aspect of it. The science of learning to interiorize, the science of learning to moderate the ego, and ultimately to overcome the ego's domination and to control that as well. And of course, this is what Paramhansa Yogananda demonstrated when he did that demonstration of the control of the breath for that one student. So let me go. I have made a list here, a number of different things, and when we talk about how to calm the body, I'd like to share with you. And let's see if you can take a few of these things. Take a few and then focus on those. And I think usually you don't have to know everything, don't have time to practice everything. But if we take a few things and we go deep into those practices, those things you might say that resonate with us. Now I've mentioned pranayama, but the aspects of pranayama, which is a big science that Paramhansa Yogananda focused on, and I think it's wise for us to follow that lead because you might say, distilled it. But if you have other interests and broader interests, that's fine too. But start with focusing these. He talked about one, even count breathing, as opposed to the dozens of other alternatives that do that inner count breathing, and especially before you meditate. Or at any time you're feeling nervous, you feel a need to calm yourself, do that. Even count breathing, you'll feel the relaxation beginning to come. If you practice yoga postures, obviously that's something very complementary to this, and that too as well. Keep the spine straight, and from that, and make sure that you're breathing diaphragmatically. You're getting that breath up in the chest and the expansion of the belly and the diaphragm, and then you could do this sitting still. But all these years, I've always had a practice, because I like to walk, is to including deep breathing in my walk and even count breathing in my walk. I walk here, where I'm doing this from a recording studio at Ananda Village, but I live not too far away, and I walk here and back. And oftentimes in the morning, especially when it's brisk in the morning, inhale for a count of 3 or 4, hold for 3 or 4 steps, exhale 3 or 4 steps, and just see if I can do that all the way, whether it's up or down, and moderating the length accordingly so I can do that. And you find that's a wonderful way to meditate. I remember in Pune when I was there for so many years, I'd walk in the morning to morning meditation, maybe half a kilometer. And I'd do that, and by the time I got to the temple there, I was energized and oxygenated just from that, and I was calm and ready to sit. Try that. And energization exercises, Master taught that as well, includes deep breathing. Hong Sa, we've all learned. This is basically, you could say, one of the supreme techniques of yoga. So simple, but yet concentration, stillness, all that goes with that, and ultimately is designed to help us still the breath and to ultimately transcend the breath if we go deep enough. You might think of that. Can I get to the point where the breath will actually stop? And if you notice in those pauses, pay attention to the deep calm and stillness and peace that comes in the pauses in between the different breaths. After you exhale, breath goes out, saw, before it comes back in. You don't have to breathe immediately. I think to some degree you could say that breathing is a habit. And I exhale, now it's time to inhale. Do you really need to inhale? Let it stay out. If it doesn't really, just let it stay there. Not forcefully, but let it stay. Then when it wants to breathe, it'll breathe. Let it be. Detach yourself from controlling. See, it's a non-control breathing exercises. Then, of course, doing Hong Sa in the spine. Inhaling, and as its body's moving, inhale, exhale, and feeling the life force come up, imagining the life force, or the breath itself, coming up the spine, base of the spine to the point between the eyebrows, and again going down. This stimulates the currents and neutralizes those currents, calms those currents. You do this for a period of time and you're just calm. And then calmness will begin to lead to deeper experiences, even blissful. I remember Swami saying he did this on an airplane flight from Hawaii to San Francisco, which was a 5-hour flight. And he started, to pass the time. He did Hong Sau in the spine for that whole journey. And he says he was in a state of bliss by the time he reached San Francisco. Try it. See if it doesn't work. This is the wonderful thing about yoga, you see, it's experiential. You can try it for yourselves. Now, like I say, there's many others as well. You can practice. But don't do those pranayamas that are meant simply for stimulating the body's energy unless they're accompanied also by the reason you stimulate the energy is in order to interiorize that energy into a state of deep calmness. If the ones otherwise, they're just going to be not achieving their true purpose, and they also have a very subtle effect of stimulating the ego if you don't take them into calmness. So pay attention to that. Meditation, of course, we have to meditate. Meditation itself will bring calmness. And when you meditate, think of yourself particularly that help you with becoming calm is entering into the silence. I'm going into the silence, the stillness of meditation. Keep the body absolutely still. Can you do that for 15 minutes? Sit, I think maybe you want to start with 2 minutes, but can you keep the body still? And then, of course, keep the mind still, of course, and then the emotions, all of that follows. But it starts with the body. And if you come to a point of going into that inner stillness where it just becomes a sense of expansion. And if you concentrate on stillness, you'll begin to go beyond body consciousness. And there's a certain infinite space. And you can even think about space in the body. Imagine the body. If you feel it's a little bit of aches and pains or restlessness in the body, just imagine space at that point. And eventually you'll come to the point of being so still that you lose sense of where the body boundaries are, and it's expansive. When you can forget the body, the consciousness automatically becomes expanding, and you begin to expand into that space. So try that. Keep positive visualization in your meditation. The mind tends to be attracted to subconscious memories and sensory experiences, and next thing you know, you're off daydreaming. But if you keep a positive visualization of some sort, a positive mood, a positive feeling, and then try to go into that, not creating a fantasy, but just the feeling of positiveness, the feeling of whatever that feeling is, the quiet stillness, has accompanying it a positive feeling. And so if you concentrate on the feeling, it'll perhaps bring back that actuality of being calm. Concentration cannot be overemphasized to being able to, and this is, you could say, it's a lifelong endeavor to learn to concentrate, keeping the mind one-pointed and still and focused. And this is why we use the breath, of course. And I know in my, I've drifted, all of us, me included, we drift off into meditation, and we find that pretty soon after a week or two goes by and we're just kind of not going deep. We're just on the surface. If I have trouble, I always go back to just watching the breath. And just watch that breath because usually it's a symptom of a lack of concentration. Now, coming back to that when I spoke about a few little other points on ego management, learning to listen, the need to be heard. Now, why do we need to be heard? What's that? Why is that impulse there? And well, the fact is it is there. I don't know It's why, that's the nature, you could say, of the mind. It's the nature of the ego. To counteract that, you could say what we need to do is we need to learn to listen rather than to assert our own self, to assert our own thoughts, our own upon the world around us. We walk about the world and we're imposing thoughts upon it. We're saying, that's a this, that's a that, I like this, it should be that. It never stops. And instead, if we can learn to listen and appreciate, try to listen more than deeper than just when somebody's speaking to you, listen more than just the words. It starts with that. But what is that? What is, if a person speaking to you and life itself is speaking to you, what is trying to happen here? What is this person trying to say, but is not very good with verbalizing what they're feeling, and they're emotionally. If you can learn to feel what others are saying and be receptive to communication, but also, as I say, in life in general, being receptive to what's going on around you, you begin to, you might say, at least moderate your conversation with the world. So you know how it is that so many people, you can tell when you're communicating to them, they're just waiting for you to stop speaking so they can tell you, well, I did this and I did that. And you could see that we're trying to impose ourselves on the world around us, and others are doing it the same way. But, you can sort of but you have to not sort of counter them. Well, I did this and you did that. Just listen, and then slowly you'll begin to, have a respectful communication. Others need training. We need training. We have to start with ourselves. Watch your voice. When you're speaking with other people, your voice is not just this voice, the voice of, but it starts there. What is your voice conveying? What vibration is there? And if you can try to voice calmness in your voice, it will actually help you to calm yourself. Many people speak very rapidly like this, and they just never give another person a chance. They say, if you're like that, my God. It's just a verbal example of a restless mind and a very restless ego. So if you can learn to speak softly, and loudly if you have to, but with a feeling to it. And what's that vibration that's going with that? This helps calm the body. Now, you could say our voice is more than just the physical instrument here. It's the aura that we're putting out at the same time that we're verbally speaking. We're putting out a certain aura. What kind of aura is it? Is it a calm one? Now feel the heart as well. Be aware of the heart and the restlessness that's going on there, and the vibration that's there, and the feelings there. Can you feel from the heart a certain a projection of a calm feeling? Now, if you're trying to keep your voice calm and your heart is beating violently, trying to, because you're angry, well, you're working against yourself. But at least if you're not perhaps expressing it so badly, but the heart obviously has to calm. And then if the calmness comes there, and you can feel the heart relaxing, feel the heart softening, whatever it takes, various exercises. Watch that, and you'll see that you can begin to express it. And if you can express calmness, even though you may not feel it, it's not hypocritical to do that. If you express it, eventually you'll begin to bring it in. And of course, you then watch the reactive process, the counting 10, not expressing it, giving yourself space to breathe. We've all told this. Sometimes you get really upset. Just breathe. And what you're doing, it's that parasympathetic nervous system. You're bringing it into play. Now, remember to speak, if you want to project calmness, try to speak from the throat. Not necessarily here from the spiritual eye, which is when you're projecting will, you're projecting concentration. But when you put your attention here at the throat, this is the center of calmness. that's of the chakras. It said one of the qualities of that. If you try to think, how am I expressing, does my voice have that calmness, then you're more likely to be able to project that. Now, coming back, you might say, to a little bit of that tendency to the ego tendency, there has to be a certain amount of surrender to be able to moderate them, to impose ourselves, have a certain faith in God, faith that things are going to be okay. You're anxious. How can you be calm if you know a tiger's about to jump on you? There's a certain amount, you have to be ready for what's coming, but at the same time, we do have to overcome that tendency of worry consciousness, and bringing that into our life. Living in the present versus anticipation, living in the future, living in the past. How can we be calm if we're not present in the moment and dealing with what's right in front of us? Right attitude, non-attachment, awareness of the divine grace. We're God's children. We rest in God's hands. So not just be in God's hands, rest in God's hands. Not meaning that we don't do what's appropriate, but the faith that comes when we know that God is with us allows us to face all obstacles calmly. And that brings, you could say, brings an inner peace. Swami Kriyananda had many times, he said, don't let anything in life steal your inner peace. That's your priority. And I think this is what it comes, we need to have priorities. And make calmness your priority. Now, I had a couple, I've run over time here, but I want to address a couple of questions that people, and there were a couple of questions, but one was more, you could say, I'll just maybe address one, because really all of them are embodied in the same answer. He says, how can you become calm immediately during a heated conversation? Now, let's universalize that. How can you calm the mind immediately during any situation when you're uncalm, your crisis, something difficult? The tiger is about to jump on you. He says, and you'd have to obviously, if you are in danger, you have to address that danger. But as I mentioned last week, Master, when he was running late for a class and somebody told him, he's hurrying down the corridor and he says, don't be nervous, Master. Master says, you can run nervously or you can run calmly. But to not run is to be lazy when you're late. So the same thing, we have to be appropriate, but how we're appropriate in whatever it is, and to be able, if you're shooting an arrow at something and you're not calm, you're going to be all over the place. You have to be calm, even in the midst of dire circumstances, because that's what wins. That's what's going to make you effective, is to have that inner calm. And I think it starts with learning to relax. I could say, relax the heart. Relax the heart. Take a pause. You have to, in other words, physically relax the heart. If you're in an angry situation, it's in a heated conversation, relax the heart. That anger tendency, that reactive anger tendency, take a breath, relax the heart, and watch the voice, what you say. The reactive tendency tends to express itself angrily through an angry voice. And how are you going to respond to that? You have to be able to respond with calmness, and you have to be able to train yourself. And if you have no training, if you haven't trained yourself, you're going to react angrily. But if you learn to train yourself to react and pause mentally, you could say, emotionally, and then you pause, and then you learn to gain control of the reactive process. And why are you angry in the first place? Of course, people stimulate that, but it's being able to gain control of that anger reflex. Leave the room if you need to. If sometimes you're in an anger situation, you don't have that control, separate yourself, put some distance, and then come back later when you gain control of yourself, and then carry on the conversation in a way. It doesn't mean being a pushover, letting somebody trample on you, but it's being able to act appropriately, deep breathing, focusing on inner peace. And I think another one here is accept responsibility. Not necessarily that you are at fault. You may be at fault, but if you are, you accept responsibility for your feelings at the moment. If you're angry, you're responsible for that anger. The other person didn't. He made me angry. He upset me, as if somehow you've been violated. Well, the fact that you're angry is not his fault. The fact that you're angry is your fault. Now, he may have done something that stimulated you. Yes, he's responsible for that. But your reaction is your responsibility. How you reply is your responsibility. And we have to take responsibility of that. But I think one of the most important things, if you're in a situation and it's a heated situation, difficult situation, take responsibility, yes, for resolving it in a positive way. But remember your priorities. This is when, unfortunately, when we lose our calm, we lose our peace of mind. If you're in a heated situation, you say things that can destroy relationships. What are your responsibility? Your responsibility, perhaps to your friendship with this person, maybe, or if it's even if it's a stranger, your responsibility of being a good neighbor, another person. You don't want to hurt other people. Now, some people are malevolent toward you. Well, you have to deal appropriately with that. But remember what your priorities are to yourself. How are you going to feel? You get angry and afterwards, it's not a good feeling. You say, oh, I really lost my anger. I lost my temper. Take responsibility. Remember your priority is to your own self. And this is, again, Swamiji would say, don't let anyone steal your peace of mind. Keep that and then do what's appropriate, but do it in a way that's calm. And you'll find this is not just wishful thinking, but you will find that you will bring calm to the situation. Oftentimes you'll resolve it. Your calmness will be a healing instrument to the difficulty. If you get angry, if you get upset, you're just throwing gasoline onto the fire and you're going to make it worse. So consequently, you have a responsibility for a good outcome to the degree that you can bring that good outcome back. So you have to take, and it's hard. Some people, another question was, what do you do? It's hard to do this. It is hard, but it takes practice. And if we do it, we find that we can bring this about. But take those few things. Take a deep breath mentally and you might say spiritually and physically. Bring calmness to the situation. Give it a pause. Exit if you have to. And relax the heart, the emotions, the reactive process. And if you can learn to control your reactive process, you have made tremendous progress on achieving yoga chitta vritti, the road, neutralization of the reactive process. And this is a demonstration, to the degree you can do that, of whether you're making progress on the spiritual path. Not the experiences that you have inside and have seen lights and all of this. It's the ability to remain centered in yourself. Master said, live in the self. Go out from time to time to do whatever's needed, and to act, interface with other people, enjoy situations as appropriate. He says, but when you're done, return to the self. Be that calm, centered self. Be in the spine and express what you do from the spine and express it in a way that's calm. In this way, actually, we then serve the teachings of our guru. We become an example, and other people say, gee, what's with you? You seem very calm. How do I get that way? When you can then share with other people, and it's true, it's not false, you've done a great service. And I think this is something all of us, as a Ananda Sangha, all of us as devotees, all of us as disciples, all of us as world citizens, need to bring into the world in this day and age with all the craziness that's going on in the world today. Bring us back to the center. Be calm. Be mindful. God bless all of you, and I'm very glad that you were able to join me this morning for this class series. It's a short class series, but I've felt very strongly about this topic of calmness. Pay attention to it, especially those of you who meditate. This is going to be your doorway. See if you can push it open a little bit, and you'll find that there's wonderful things behind it as you open that door. God bless all of you, and until the next series, I wish you all the best. God bless.